Okay, let's go.
Welcome back to EndZone Sports. With the bulk of the offseason behind us and players reporting to mini camps, it's time to take a look at how each team did this 2023 offseason. This episode, the AFC South.
Moving on to free agency, the Texans picked up Dalton Schultz, tight end from Dallas. As a Dallas fan, I am going to miss Dalton a lot. He did a lot for us. He's kind of the, when you think of a tight end, he kind of fits that mold. I think he'll do well, especially with a rookie quarterback. Rookie quarterbacks love to use their tight ends as crutch. Might be a negative word, but it's not as I'm using it here. So I hope that goes well. Devin Singletary, running back from Buffalo. He's had some solid years the past couple years up there in New York. I think he'll come down here and do pretty well. Juice is going to be blocking for him, so might be dependent on each other. Jimmy Ward, a safety. Jimmy's solid. He was one of the sought-after DBs in this year's free agent group. Think he could do really some nice things to shore up the defense on the back end for the Texans. And then just some other guys. Robert Woods, older wide receiver, but he could be a nice veteran presence as well as a good mentor for Tank and some of the other younger receivers that they have on the team. And then they also picked up Sheldon Rankins, who's a defensive tackle. Helped shore up kind of the middle of the defensive line there in Houston. So Houston Texans made a lot of moves this offseason. Kind of curious to see how it all pans out for them. My grade will be kind of a safe grade towards the end, but it will change contingent on how they do this season. But let's go over what they did. Obviously took CJ Stroud in the first round out of Ohio State. Solid quarterback, my favorite quarterback prospect in this year's draft. Hoping he'll do well. They also made those moves that I'm sure most of y'all saw on draft night to get Will Anderson Jr. out of Alabama immediately after picking CJ Stroud. I think he's probably the safest prospect out of the whole draft. He consistent output at Alabama during his career, and I think he'll be a force to be reckoned with. Will's a dog, to put it shortly. Some other draft picks, they picked Juice Scruggs, a center from Penn State, in the second round. As a former offensive lineman myself, I tend to look at the offensive line a lot whenever the draft's coming around, and Juice, I like what I saw. So hoping he puts out well. Always good to draft the offensive lineman early. Nice return on investment typically. So see how he does. And then they also picked a local guy at wide receiver, Tank Dell, out of Houston. Tank is a speedster. Watched him a lot last year, so I think he'll do well. I know y'all probably saw some of the videos of CJ Stroud reaching out to the coach and to the GM to pick Tank. It seems like they built a nice rapport kind of leading up to the season. Overall, I think I'm going to stick Houston at B, a grade B. I think it could be an A, but seems safe, so we'll go with that. Moving on to the Indianapolis Colts, they were also pretty busy this year as far as the draft is concerned. Not too crazy in free agency, but we'll see how that goes. Obviously, they picked kind of the biggest question mark of the draft, Anthony Richardson, in the first round from Florida. Richardson is very unpolished, but obviously has all the athletic capability to potentially be a star. And their new head coach I would assume will try to do the same thing that he did with Jalen Hurts in Philadelphia. And if that pans out, that will be a scary human being. Julius Brents, second round cornerback from Kansas State. Pretty solid. Kansas State had a great year last year, had a great defense, so I'm sure he'll do well. Josh Downs, third round wide receiver of North Carolina. Josh, watched a few of his games last year. I think he's a pretty solid talent at wide receiver. I'm sure typically as it goes, whenever you draft a quarterback and a wide receiver in the same draft, they tend to build a nice rapport, so might be a connection worth watching here. They also picked, and I might get butchered for saying this the wrong way, but Ade Tomiwa Bawar, a 4th-round defensive tackle from Northwestern. This guy blew up at the combine. I mean, he just did phenomenal. A lot of talk of him being a first-round pick. I was surprised when he fell to the 4th round. So I think Indianapolis got a steal there. Dude's going to be really solid in the middle of that defensive line, help him out in the trenches. And then they also picked up Blake Freeland from BYU in the 5th round. Another solid athletic guy. Offensive lineman from BYU tend to do well, given past, just looking statistically speaking. And I think Blake will probably do well as long as he develops. They also picked up Gardner Minshew in the free agency. I'm a big Gardner fan, always have been. So I'm kind of curious to see how that works out between him and Anthony Richardson. Obviously, I think Richardson is the plan, but like I said, he's unpolished, so Gardner might just be kind of a insurance plan until they feel like Richardson is ready to play. Saw some grades for the Colts, on PFF and some other websites, giving them like A's, A minuses. I can't give them that here. I think I'm going to give them a B, solid B. Feel like, there obviously wasn't a lot of free agency movement. Great draft, dependent on the Anthony Richardson deal. But I'm going to stick with a B here for the Colts as well. And moving on, we're going to go to the Jacksonville Jaguars. They were pretty quiet this year in the offseason, so we're going to kind of curious to see how things go. Just speaking from the draft, we're going to start off. They had picked Anton Harrison, offensive tackle from Oklahoma in the 1st round. Anton, solid dude, big, going to be great at the offensive tackle spot, I think. So that's a great pick. Like I said, always good to draft O-linemen early. Nice return on investment. Picked Brenton Strange in the 2nd round, tight end from Penn State. And no pun intended here, but I find it a little strange because they re-signed Evan Ingram, in the offseason. So kind of weird. I think Brenton and Evan probably play a different sort of game, so maybe a 2 tight end set, let Evan get in the slot. Obviously, he's a great receiving target, had a nice year last year. So kind of curious to see what their plan is there, but no telling, they know more than I do. Picked up Tank Bigsby from Auburn in the 3rd round. I love Tank a lot. Just a hard-hitting running back. I think he'll be a nice compliment to Travis Etienne. Obviously, Travis Etienne's kind of a budding star now that he's found his way a little bit down in Jacksonville. But I think Tank will be a nice goal line, short yardage running back to kind of take off some of those heavy-hitting plays off of Travis Etienne. They also picked up Ventrell Miller, linebacker from Florida. As an LSU fan, I don't like Florida, but I can't lie when I say that they put out some phenomenal talent, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Ventrell, watched him some last year. He's a hard hitter. He'll do good there in the middle. And and then also interesting, not necessarily free agent or draft related, but Calvin Ridley will be coming back, which I think is huge. Calvin was he was a very solid wide receiver in the league before he had his whole deal with the gambling thing. So I think that might be a little contingent on what they're planning on for their success this season. Obviously, the Jaguars finished off the season very well last year and had an electric playoff win. And Trevor Lawrence is starting to turn into what everybody thought he was supposed to be. So a lot of excitement down in Jacksonville in Duval County. But as far as from an offseason perspective goes, I hate to do this again, but I'm gonna give him a B minus. It wasn't bad, but just not much going on here. Love the Tank Bigsby pick. I think the Anton Harrison pick's good. Like I said, Brenton Strange, 2nd round, tight end. Not sure I like that, but we'll see. Re-signing Evan Ingram's good after his bounce back year last year. So we'll see. And then the Tennessee Titans to wrap us up here for the AFC South. Tennessee, just an interesting situation all the way around. Had a terrible O-line last year, which is, when you kind of depend on the running game like they do, that's not really something you want to have issues with. But obviously Derrick Henry is one of the best running backs in the league, so didn't really have too much trouble there. So they kind of shored that up, though, so happy to see that. Obviously, they picked Peter Skoronski in the first round, offensive tackle out of Northwestern. There's not enough good things to be said about him. He's a solid player. I think he's going to do very well in the league, and if you want to shore up your offensive line, I think that's a very good place to start. They also picked up Will Levis in the second round, obviously quarterback out of Kentucky. Similar to Anthony Richardson, I'd say he's kind of unpolished. A lot of hype around him as well. There's potential that he's very good, and then there's potential that he pulls a Zach Wilson because he threw some nice balls at a combine. So see how it turns out. Obviously, they moved on from Malik Willis really quick, so that is interesting. Kind of curious to see how that dynamic plays out as well with Ryan Tannehill still being on the roster, trying to show that he's still the guy. So that quarterback battle is going to be interesting in Tennessee as we get closer to the season. They picked up my guy, Tyjae Spears, third-round running back out of Tulane. Love this dude. I know I said I'm an LSU fan, but I'm also just a Louisiana boy at heart. And Tyjae had a phenomenal year, as did the University of Tulane. So I'm really looking forward to this. Obviously, you're going to be backing up Derrick Henry. Derrick kind of been suffering some injuries recently, probably in part to the fact that they don't have a good O-line. So Tyjae will probably have opportunities to kind of come out and really earn some nice carries out of the backfield up in Nashville. Also picked up Josh Wiley, fifth-round tight end out of Cincinnati. I saw some tape on Josh, and I like him a lot. I think this was a heavy tight end class, so it was easy to get kind of swept under the rug. But I think he could do really well in Tennessee, so we'll just have to see. They picked up Andre Dillard at guard, another solid offensive guard. So him and Skoronski will be nice additions to the O-line that they had last year. Picked up Arden Key, LSU guy from defensive end. So Arden's a great player. I think he'll be a nice addition. And they also added Sean Murphy-Bunting at cornerback. Pretty sought-after DB in this free agent group. So hopefully kind of shores up the outside there in Tennessee. So I hate to do it for the fourth time, but this group doesn't stick out to me too much. I think the Skoronski's a great ad. I love the Tyjae Spears pick, and I think Josh Wiley could end up being a very solid tight end. Free agent signings were good, not great, and the Levis thing is similar to Richardson. It's very, this grade is contingent on how well he does. So I'm going to give Tennessee Titans a B+ to kind of edge them out. So, yeah, that covers the AFC South. This has been Ryan Rayburn with EndZone Sports. Thank you for listening.